Salutations everyone, Salamander here, and in this video I'm going to, go a little or just re-describe the Hadal Dimension rifts and how opening portals into the Hadal Dimension kind of, I guess, the lore surrounding it. I guess you could say think of this video as just so you don't have to watch the whole thing for this specific kind of lore. So rifts are essentially a naturally occurring opening between the Hadal dimension and other dimensions. And when I say natural, I mean this is just it's not entirely understood, but within the lore, it's theorized that this is due to the ethereal existence and whatnot of the Hadal dimension itself, all the energies and everything creating these just naturally occurring openings, which are, as described before, what allow things in the Hadal dimension to just enter into, say, our reality without any issue. It is a two-way door, meaning that while I described the dark essence as being a hazard or potential hazard, it only emits off the, I guess you could say, the rim of the opening and not the entire thing. So it also isn't a sort of thing that will go through, say, a hazard suit that is fully, uh, I guess, closed off from the outside. So you could theoretically have like a hazmat suit and walk through the rift and into the Hadal dimension. In fact, this is kind of how the Hadal dimension was discovered in the first place by some of the alien species in our universe. Now, this is not recommended for, I guess, obvious reasons, but it's just so you know that it is something that is possible. Now, for opening m- artificial portal or rift, aka just a gateway or portal. Um, the reasons as to why, and I did talk about this a little before, but I guess I wanted to see if I could describe it in a little better way, is that the processes that go into creating like let me rephrase that. The way the device that you're using uh take uses the energy and whatnot to create the portal is what causes a negative effect on space and time that makes up that given reality in which you have used that device in. So, a good example would be to think of our universe like a snow globe, in that the glass is pretty much, I guess you could say, space and time, the barrier between realities and everything. So naturally, over time, there's maybe a little bit of wear and tear, but nothing that's exactly threatening. Hence, these are the rifts. I guess you could figuratively call them. However, when you artificially create a portal, aka force your way into the Hadal dimension yourself, you cause an extreme amount of wear and tear on the glass. Thus, you create cracks and maybe even shatter areas. Now, these cracks in any big shattered areas are figurative for the increase in the rift openings. This means that I forget if I actually touched upon this, but I'll touch upon it now if I didn't. that say naturally every so couple centuries there's maybe one or two rifts that open randomly in our universe. By using a teleportation device into the Hadal dimension specifically, or in general, that wear and tear will cause for more rifts to open. So instead of two every couple centuries, it's probably going to be like 20, or at the very least five. 20 was probably a bit extreme, but you should get the idea that it's not a good thing. Now, the only reason this isn't really a good thing is because, well, one, this means more Hadal Dimension creatures are potentially entering the reality, and two, as I touched on, I guess before, this makes in makes it more likely that there's going to be a macro hunter. And this would, I guess the way I worded it before is that it implies that the macro hunter is going to walk through the rifts, which they don't. They never do, due to I guess, the reasons I stated, um, or what I touched on in the previous video, that being they can just teleport into other dimensions or get into other dimensions in their own means, so why would they walk through a rift? However, they um, have the aforementioned super sense where they can just sense other dimensions. And what I didn't say is that they can sense this wear and tear on a reality and are more likely to show up in order to, I guess you could say, eat while it's hot, or just take advantage of the situation while they can before everything is gone, sort of deal. And if you remember how I said the Hadal dimension is infinite, this means that if one macro hunter essentially does that, where they show up trying to take advantage or of the situation, it's likely that there's going to be an infinite number of other macro hunters that also have this idea or have sensed the wear and tear. And that is actually how universes have gotten essentially just annihilated by the Hadal dimension. I guess you could say unintentionally, in the way that I had described in the prior video. Now, I also touched upon the dark essence and how the rifts essentially emit this dark essence and how it interacts with life forms in other dimensions, and how I described that animals like a dog or something is going to mutate into essentially another kind of Hadal dimension creature. So I'm going to kind of explain it a little bit better, since I briefly went over it in the previous video. So what I mean by they mutate into a Hadal dimension creature is, let's use the dog example again and say that the dog essentially comes into contact with the dark essence and is essentially evolving or mutating. You most would say evolving. It wouldn't be some completely random, absolute abomination kind of thing. It would essentially just, I guess you could say, resemble a more nightmarish version of itself. Um, Hadal dimension creatures usually have specific kind of look to them. You'll see from the few that I will show of the drawings that I've done of Hadal dimension creatures in future videos, which will give you a better idea. But for now, just the best I can say is that it would look more like probably a reptilian version of a dog, almost, or reptilian canine, sort of, and it would look absolutely nightmarish. Not in a grotesque way, but in a very alien, otherworldly way. And of course, creatures that have had this happen to them also have ethereal abilities, just like the natural life forms within the Hadal Dimension. Now, a few things about the dark essence that I kind of, I guess, hinted at before is that you can indeed like contain it within a container, which I don't know why you would want to do that, but I guess you could say that the indication is given on how we know um what happens when a sentient being comes into contact with the dark essence is because many have tried to essentially harness this dark essence for their own personal gain or for a power source or something. And through, I guess you could say, failed attempts, an inevitable, I guess, leak occurred, and thus an individual would accidentally come into contact with the dark essence, and then you have all the symptoms of which I described prior. Um, it's definitely not a good time to come into contact with dark essence if you are a sentient being. And I guess I'll just take the opportunity to, I guess, uh, restate the what happens is, and it's essentially that you go pretty much insane permanently. You lose your mind and are constantly seeing nightmarish visions of all the things that exist within the Hadal dimension. It's not really understood how that works, but again, this is kind of why it's believed that this dark essence might be kind of the dark matter of the Hadal dimension sort of thing, where it just is what's holding it all together or makes up the foundation of it all, and that by coming into contact with it, you essentially are, I guess, your mind kind of senses everything now, which, of course, for the human mind isn't, your mind is not meant to do that. Hence why you are constantly, essentially insane now, and it's a literal living nightmare. You would probably be scrunched up in a corner saying these absolute mumbo jumbo, terrified mumbles to yourself, and you'd most definitely be put into an insane asylum. You would be essentially too terrified to literally do anything, to move, to walk around, to eat, to drink. You would not even have the motivation to unsubscribe yourself from existence itself. That's how terrified you would be of all these visions. And it kind of should be understandable and expected considering you'd be seeing things that are not um, familiar to the human mind. It's not exactly Lovecraftian, where it's just a whole mass of flesh and teeth, but it would definitely be unfamiliar, like a little off when you look at them. And I th- that should just about do it for uh, going a little bit more in depth about the rifts. Um, I hope that this was at least a bit more informative on how the rifts and portals work and how the dark essence works. Hopefully, I hope that this was somewhat enjoyable, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.